Oh boy. Oh, okay. Getting this situated. This should work right this time. I fucking hope. Yes. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. Whatever it is you identify as, from basketball to Tyrannosaurus Rex. How you doing? This is Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclasts. I'm your host, Mike. I am redoing this episode because the audio was so shitty on the last one, and I'm trying to hold myself to a higher standard as of late. I've been absent for about 2 weeks as far as content creation goes. If you've already listened to the just deplorable audio that I put out beforehand, oh man, I have multiple reasons for replacing it, but I talked about myself quite a bit, more than I usually do. I said in the show notes that it was to project a sense of humanity and vulnerability, and please feel free to skip past it. But essentially what's going on is I've been spending the last 2 weeks detoxing off buprenorphine. I've been on it for about 6 years-ish. If you're not familiar with buprenorphine, it is a drug used to treat opioid withdrawal, former opioid addiction. I myself am a former opioid addict. I'm a former a lot of things. I'm finding I'm not the things that I used to be the older I get. I'm becoming new and terrible things, evolving in strange ways. I said previously that the best adjective I can use to sum up my current state and bodily functions are drippy. That still holds true. I am still recuperating. Let's just roll with it. I was anxious to get an episode out because I hadn't done one in 2 weeks, and I just had all this alien knowledge and just questions, big questions about the universe, philosophizing about who we are and where we're going, and mostly being terrified, not because of aliens, but because of people. Yes, there was a recurrent theme that I'd like to address about conspiracies, ufology, things like that, in that it takes away, there's a sense or a need to take away our own personal responsibility. Like the thought of when the aliens come, things will be better. Or, it's a conspiracy, so it's out of my hands. And as I said before in the previous episode, I am a bit of a fatalist when it comes to personal responsibility. I consider myself in my own situation because of my own actions and my own fault. And I'm, fine with that. There's not much I'd do over if I had the chance. These are all learning experiences. As the Gnostics put it, this reality is a prison. However, I like to think of it as a prison academy, a school of sorts, if you will. We're here to learn, we're here to evolve, and when we die, we go back to the one and bring our experiences, and maybe all that stuff conglomerates to make what some may call capital G God. I don't know. That's my best working theory so far. But I will say that humanity in general, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. Nobody has any idea. They have a good idea. And that's about it. Anyone who says that they know what the fuck is going on is either a liar or trying to sell you something or trying to get you to join their cult. So please keep that in mind. As I said before, only the madman is certain. So yeah, I don't know. That's about as much as I want to rehash the Dawson's Creek personalization of myself. I don't know. I mean, I try not to talk about myself on this show a lot, but sometimes it's inevitable. I mean, you have to. And we will come back to the subject of personal responsibility and overcoming adversity once again later on in this episode. But yeah, enough of me railing on. Let's jump into what's weird this week. And we're going to talk about the Miami Mall alien. We have to. Now, in the previous episode that I did before with the shitty audio, I kind of snapped at the Christians a little bit. Yeah,
where's your Messiah now?
I think the whole Nephilim angle of this whole story is a bit much. I said it's, Christianity and the beliefs inherent thereof. They're no more strange or ridiculous or weird than any other belief system that we're using to, navigate our way through the maelstrom of bullshit that we call reality. These are coping mechanisms, and they come in all forms. I don't know why so many people are just itching for the apocalypse, because as far as I can tell, the appearance of the Nephilim is supposed to, count towards the return of Christ and the biblical apocalypse. Yeah, I don't know why people are so jazzed to have that happen so soon. From what I can tell, there will be a lot of deaths of non-believers. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. I think that it just doesn't. I don't know. It's, as I said before, it's a bit egocentric. I don't know. It's got an anthropocentric principle. You know what? Let me just put it this way. Christianity is fine. It's Christians that I mostly worry about, and I'll leave it at that. The other thing I wanted to say about it was that I haven't seen no fucking aliens in that footage. But you know what I have seen is a vast overexpenditure of taxpayer money. And even if this was kids who may or may not have had sticks, as I heard in one source, or kids who may or may not have had fireworks in one source, and even if this was a hypothetical mass shooting, man, they sure showed the fuck out for that particular incident. I don't know, I've heard people say that they floated the alien idea because the police were embarrassed about how many fucking cop cars and officers showed up to what may have been just a brawl in the mall. So, I don't know, I could definitely see that. I would be embarrassed if I were on the Miami police force. I don't know, especially if they're trying to float the story that this is kids with fireworks or sticks. Wow. I don't know. Just the word pusillanimous comes to mind. I mean, use the abbreviation for that word. You know the one I mean. A bit ridiculous, a bit overkill, I would say. But people want to believe in aliens as opposed to the inherent police state that's right in front of their fucking faces. I don't know. I don't know anymore. How many more people will it take to get executed in the street? We don't even, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. It's too much of a downer. This is all about escapism as far as I can help it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was what I love the media is referring to as the Jewish tunnels.
Aha! Aha!
Which I love. It's almost as if the tunnels themselves are Orthodox Hasid tunnels. I understand that whenever you get a bunch of Jewish people together and they do anything weird, they're a very insular community, especially the Orthodox Jews. They're very, I hesitate to use the word secretive, but they keep to themselves, which, if only more religions acted that way. Geez, I'm crow. Anyways, but yeah, when you're secretive, and especially if you're Jewish, my God, the conspiracy ball gets rolling. But it's very easy when you're secretive. It's like, it's how we don't really have secret societies because everyone's heard of these secret societies. So we have secretive societies. And when something or someone is secretive, it's easy to fill in the gaps with, your speculations and suppositions. Now, I will point out a fact alluded to by the great Peter Levenda. I can't stress how much I love that dude. Sinister Forces books enough. They're great. I highly recommend everyone read them. I believe this was in one of those books, but the idea behind conspiracy theories in general, I mean, people don't get together and pay other people's hospital bills or, pay for their food and groceries for the month secretly. I mean, that may happen here and there, but, most people, when they do good works, quote unquote, they want their name up on the wall for it. So it's very rare that people get together secretively for good reasons. So I understand the thought process, but at the same time, it's not necessarily always their fault. I believe there was a dearth of media information right out the gate as far as these Jewish tunnels go. From what I've seen and read so far, and it's been quite a few days now, they were trying to, they're related to some, I guess the word is extremist, well, maybe not extremist, a fringe sect of Judaism who thinks that their dead rabbi was the Messiah. I don't quite know how you have a dead Messiah. I don't know. Maybe I'm not down with the finer points of Hasidic Judaism or Messiah mathematics in general. So who knows? I could be wrong. But other than that, what I believe was going on is they were trying to establish a method of regular access to ritual baths in relation to COVID. And I know that with a lot of religions, especially Judaism, ritual purification or purification rituals, whichever way you want to put it, are very prominent. And they're not the only religion. It's big in Shinto. I mean, you find it somewhere sooner or later. I mean, they chop all the end of baby dicks off for the same reason. So, I don't know. There's all kinds of strange things done in the name of purification and cleanliness and etc. in the eyes of a religious context. So, who knows? I don't know. I maybe harp on the circumcision thing a little too much, but I want my foreskin back because I heard there's some bomb shit in there that feels really great. I don't know. That could just be a lie from the big foreskin companies. Who knows? So yeah, still drippy. But other than that, I don't know. It's progressing along nicely. I'm getting better. I'm feeling. I'm getting back my smart think brainness again. So working towards that. I'm recycling a lot of jokes from the last one too. I don't know. I'm just throwing them out there and seeing what sticks. That's all I can do. So anywho, while we're in the midst of what's weird this week, I've got a special audio excerpt that I want to play. This sort of goes into the overarching theme, one of the overarching themes of this episode, which is that, to put it bluntly, aliens, if indeed they exist, I'm pretty sure are fucking retarded. And I'm dropping a hard R on that. They do things that make no sense. They do things that I don't even think they know what they're doing. So, having said that, today's audio is phone calls, mysterious phone call recordings, quote unquote, from a man named Gary Sudbrink. Now, He received these phone calls, which sound like they're done. They sound like they've been pre-recorded on a tape recorder and are being played slow. There's even a point in one phone call where you can hear like a whoa, 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 like it sounds like a robot laughing or a tape recorder rewinding or fast forwarding. Now, I failed to mention last time that this fellow Gary Sudbrink, he worked for the military at the time that these phone calls were occurring, and apparently he'd come from Texas, where he was stationed, to Queens, New York, where he's from, which you will find out. This dude is so Queens. Oh man, I don't know. I love it. I love it though. Are you an intergalactic person? You'll see what I'm talking about. So it turns out that when he got back to Queens, he called his friend to say, hey, you know, I made it home. My flight was all right, everything or whatever, checking in with his buddy. And his buddy was like, yeah, I know you called me 3 days ago and told me. And he's like, what? So apparently he had been also being impersonated by someone, which he didn't, you know, he had no knowledge of. And then he starts receiving these phone calls telling him all kinds of strange information. But once again, like I said, none of it makes any fucking sense. Even the wording, even the grammatical syntax errors of what may be an intergalactic person, it just doesn't make any sense. So, like I said last time, the calls speak for themselves. I will just play them in series and let you hear them, and you judge for yourself.
Like the kid, here go.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Right. When am I coming back? Is that your question? Okay, there was a break. Hold on. You want to know when I'm coming back to Texas? Oh, is that your question?
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
By the other voice.
Okay. I'll be coming back eventually. I can't tell you when. You should know that question, answer to the questions, because you seem to know more about me than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Are you an intergalactic person?
Are you a space alien?
Sounds like you hung up.
I can't believe this.
Keep an eye in the sky, he said.
Keep an eye in the sky?
Yeah.
Yes, Kenny, I talked to him. I had a sighting.
Okay, hold on. Say that. Repeat that again. Please repeat. Okay.
Near Orion.
Near Orion.
Holy mackerel. Tonight or just when?
The full moon.
They told
So, double from you.
Repeat.
Tell him I like his phone.
Okay. Repeat last word. I'm hearing static.
Tell him I like his phone.
He hung up.
Hello? Okay. Should I go out right now? Right now? Okay, see, I'm not sure where Orion is now, but we'll go outside. It would show double from me. Repeat that again?
You can contact as the same with you.
think about that. I'd like to see you.
To be contact as the same with you.
Hey, let me tell you something. I've been listening to you, and I've had contacts with you.
Government interference? You have? Please explain what type of interference. Okay.
Visitations to be disrupted by them. Appears. Sun will rise from dark side of world. No.
The sun will rise from the dark side of the moon.
Okay, what branch of the government? What should I do?
Beware. Government interference. Visitations to be disrupted by them.
Okay. Is that good for me or bad? They hung up.
Oh boy. Yeah. Who knows what's going on there? Yeah. So the reason I wanted to play these, as I said, one of the main reoccurring themes today is that aliens are retarded. And I will get into more reasons why this is. But the main subject of this episode is going to be one Dr. KARLA Turner. Now, KARLA Turner is an educator from, well, I believe when her story starts is 87, 88, and this occurred, she was well, her family and those surrounding her, friends of her family, she claims also to have been abducted by aliens. The thing about her story is, though, I read her first book, Into the Fringe, and took notes throughout while I was reading it. And the thing is that the vast majority of this story revolves around hypnotic regression. So there's no real physical evidence that anything whatsoever occurred. However, I do like her. She's a smart woman. She was a professor. She was an educator. She's not called doctor for no reason. She didn't go to 4 years of evil medical school to not be called doctor. No, she got into this whole UFO rigmarole because she assigned a paper in her class, one of her like logic or debate classes, where everyone could pick one of 3 subjects, which were UFOs, Bigfoot, or the Loch Ness Monster, and had to argue for or against, their existence, essentially. And the more UFO, she said that more people picked UFOs than anything else. And the more she read it, she was like, you know what? Yeah, maybe, kind of. And then from that point on, it sort of opened the floodgates, so to speak. She, sooner or later, starts to realize, her and her husband both, that they are suffering from the physical symptoms of overt stress, which they don't understand because they don't consider their lifestyles to be all that stressful. So they each go to their own respective therapists. And it is while she's talking to her own therapist that he teaches her a sort of self-hypnosis method, which she later uses on her husband. And her husband, under hypnotic regression, goes all the way back to when he was 2 years old. And he's in his father's car, and next thing he knows, it's surrounded by light. The electronics fail. It's the classic scenario. And then she's pushing him further and further into it, like, let's dissect this memory a little bit. And the more he goes into it, the more it becomes strange and alien and weird. And eventually he's like, oh, I see faces. And he starts describing these faces, how they're like old faces, but not human old faces. And he starts panicking, he starts freaking out, and she's like, 1, 2, 3, you're no longer in a spaceship, and brings him back from out of the hypnotic regression. And he draws a picture of the faces he saw, and she said that they disturbed her to such a degree that she couldn't even be in the same room with the drawings of the faces. So afterwards, she calls her therapist, and her therapist essentially, this is essentially the exchange in the book. The therapist is like, yeah, don't go around saying this to anyone. Don't talk about this. Just don't talk about it. And she's like, well, I mean, we kind of need to. There's something strange going on here, obviously. What's up? And he's like, yeah, hypnotic regression is a thing, but I don't think little green men are a thing, which is one of the fucking, I don't know, to me that's a funny, there's an inherent comedy to that particular comment, I don't know, to me at least. So, yeah, she starts engaging in more, self-examination, her family, the people around her, friends of the family. And what's weird is they eventually end up both going to another hypno-regression therapist, another alien researcher named Barbara Bartholic, I believe is how you pronounce it, in Oklahoma. And she is putting them under on a regular basis. And they're finding more and more story coming out. There's more and more of a narrative building, which goes towards some of my own strange theories that we'll talk about later. But the whole entire book, pretty much, is it consists of hypnotic regression therapy sessions and information gleaned from those. And there's hardly any at all evidence, physical, objective evidence, to suggest that anything untoward occurred, except she does mention that they start being followed. They're being tracked by unmarked white trucks. Helicopters are flying over their house. At one point, her husband is abducted by military officials, but I will say, she mentions very early on in the book that her husband is former military intelligence who spoke several languages and worked as a translator in his capacity for military intelligence. So this is one of those weird tangential connections that you see quite a bit in the abduction literature. There's usually some kind of military or military intelligence connection. There's another episode in which her future daughter-in-law, who is in college for meteorology and is also enrolled in the JROTC program, she is talking to her military advisor / recruiter about how she wants to get into the field of meteorology for the Army. And the recruiter is like, well, don't you want to work with UFOs and aliens? And apparently this dude had no idea what was going on, and it kind of like freaked him out. And they were like, why the fuck would that come up? So at least this is the story they tell. I don't know. I have no reason to doubt KARLA Turner. I believe that she believes what she's saying. And I know, and I said this last time too, I don't want to step on anyone's toes who has, you know, I want to believe the victim always. And I want to, I know that I want to acknowledge that these situations are traumatic as fuck, and they are highly unpleasant most of the time. It's very rare that you hear the good stories of alien abduction, which I really don't. I don't know. I also don't think there is such a thing, but that's just me. Once again, we'll get into my theories at the end of this, but yeah, it's just strange, and I talked last time about the stringent copyright, or excuse me, not copyright, censorship on YouTube, and how you can't say words like suicide or murder, and that by not being able to say these words, we're putting our head in the sand and not, addressing issues that need to be talked about. If we can't say the word, then how the fuck are we going to talk about these things? How are we going to deal with them head on? And I get that some words are triggering, and I'm about to drop a trigger word, so just heads up on that. But the vast majority of these alien abductions are tantamount to rape. They are physically, mentally, spiritually, definitely sexually invasive. They're violating, and they make people feel icky and weird and gross, and I totally get it. And that is why you have such feelings of, just the things that come along with that kind of trauma. So I get that it is not something that most people want to deal with or talk about, very openly. And you want a, how to put this? You want to be surrounded by people that you can sort of count on and rely on to be open and listening to what you have to say about it. But at the same time, Karla Turner also mentions that you see this phenomenon happen within the same sort of family lines. And you hear, and this is, she's pulling all her research, and this is what I love about her. She pulls all her research from a vast swath of independent research into various abduction stories, phenomenon, etc. She basically did what Jacques Vallée did and kind of put all this, information in a computer database to look at the similarities of what's going on. And she came up with a bit of a top 10 list that we'll get into later. Listicles are always good for people with short attention spans, but I think the implications of much of her list have some, they need to be pondered over, is what I'll say for now. But yes, most of this phenomenon, this abduction phenomena, occurs within the same family lines, family friends, people who know each other very intimately, it would seem. And on top of this, when you're getting into things like group therapy for abduction experiences, you're kind of entering a feedback loop. And on top of this, she also says that you're sort of inclined to back away from people that you at least feel or have a pretty good idea are going to be judgmental or call you a nutcase, etc., because you don't want to deal with those judgments on top of whatever the fuck else it is you're already dealing with. It's bad enough. So you don't need people, deriding you, mocking you, ridiculing you. But at the same time, once again, this creates such a feedback loop. It's a very, it's a circle of confirmation bias that reinforces your beliefs and your ideas and these narratives that keep popping up. The similarities in narratives that take place within the abduction literature. So there is that to consider, and I'm glad that she at least acknowledges that. But I don't know. It's strange that she acknowledges it and doesn't. I mean, she makes mention of it, but she doesn't really give much further thought to it. And I will say that the book I read, Into the Fringe, this is the story of how her and her family got into this. Her second book, I believe, is called Taken, and it's a sort of an examination of, I believe, 8 different women's stories of how they were abducted and the fallout, the repercussions, consequences, reactions, etc., that take place afterwards. Things like various illnesses, which I tend to think are psychosomatic. I don't know. Like I said, there's very rare instances in which you have physical evidence of alien abduction. I mean, there's some occasions where you have implants of some sort or some foreign object or material that shows up in the body. But unless you're looking at, medical records, which are hard to access for regular researchers, you're shit out of luck on that. And the other sort of, I hesitate to call this evidence, though there is an interesting sort of Jacques Vallée overlapping folkloric aspect to this, but the constant self-inspection, I'll say, of the body to find strange markings, scars, scoop marks, etc. Now, having said that, I'll also say I drink. And, you can't account for every fucking physical mark that shows, especially if you share a bed with someone who has toenails or work a certain job with, it's just, there's too many random factors that play into something like that. I will say, however, and if you're unfamiliar with Jacques Vallée, the best way I can put it is he's sort of the one who champions the idea that if you look at alien abductions and you look at old-timey myth, folklore, legend, etc., of things like fairies and elves, there is a strange overlap between the interactions and phenomena as far as we've seen them through history. So maybe we're just reframing things today with aliens in a sort of space age sci-fi aspect of something that's been happening to humankind forever. There are reoccurring themes that sort of overlap, like being taken away to another world, or, changelings and hybrids, things like that. So yeah, there's all these points of convergence that take place within folklore and ufology. So one of the ones that interested me, however, and, like I said, these whole scoop marks and scars thing are, I hesitate to lend them much credence. But one interesting thing that I saw, though, is that these sort of coincide with something called witch marks from back in the day, which you don't really hear a lot about. And this is more than just like a third tit on a witch. There's all these weird, like, little scars and things like that. And one that specifically keeps coming up is a ... triangle formation, which some people say is a mockery of the Trinity. Jesus Christ. Anyways, but this same triangle formation also shows up on cattle mutilations. And personally, I think if cattle mutilations are real, they're probably a psyop. That's just me. That's just what I'm going with. So maybe, undoubtedly, if this were a human operation and people were behind it, the quote-unquote retarded aliens, as I put it, they're reading the literature. They're looking at it. They're probably writing a lot of it, too. So, who knows? But, yeah. Eventually, to kind of put a cap on Karla Turner's story before I get to her top 10 list of, her most cogent findings, essentially, her referential inferences, her Sherlock Holmesian write-up of her examination of a vast swath of literature. She died young of cancer. And a lot of people think that she was targeted and, that her death was not an accident. I find it strange that at the very beginning of Into the Fringe, the book I read was Taken and Into the Fringe together as one volume. I just read the first book. But I find it strange that at the beginning of the book, they also state Karla Turner was not murdered. She died of cancer. Like, I don't know. They take a very... It's just weird that they specifically chose to acknowledge it. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I kind of get it at the same time, but it's weird that they... I don't know. It's almost like they're trying to throw fuel on the fire in a reverse psychology way. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. Excuse me. Coffee. As I said last time, a man such as myself who is fueled by hate, rage, disgust, and coffee, well, there's no stopping him. In fact, most people like me keep the world running. Not me, but, people like me. There is another incident that I failed to mention in the previous episode, the last time I did this, but there is a hypnotic regression session of Karla Turner's son, who was drunk at the time that he had some strange experience. So during the hypnotic regression, he is equally incoherent, and he keeps saying things like, I don't know, I'm not the one in control. And it's like, yeah, I'll tell you who's in control. The fucking liquor's in control, buddy. It is the most just ridiculous waste of space that I've seen written down in a long time. It has no real pertinent information to the overall narrative structure of what's going on. It's, oh man, it's just silly. But yeah, getting to her, let me see here. Checking my notes. Where are you? You hear the paper, that's how you know it's really happening. Okay, so she came up with these like 10 points of convergence that she got from looking over all the literature in, the abduction. I will say also, as I said last time, that when you immerse yourself into this kind of study, you got to stop every fucking so often and just take a break, drink a pop, eat a cheese sandwich, because when you keep reading this kind of material, once it's just like the feedback loop thing. And trust me, I know from experience, because I've had incidents. Maybe I'm a little easily influenced. I don't know. But when you read like 4 or 5 alien books that constantly talk about things like how they walk through walls or shift out of another dimension, you're going to be kind of paranoid as fuck for the next several days. And all she did was read books like Communion and Bud Hopkins and, oh boy, Dr. David Jacobs, who we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. I posted the Dr. David Jacobs on Art Bell to the Facebook page. I highly recommend you listen to it. It is some of the most fear-mongering, alien, hullabaloo horseshit I've heard in a while. I mean, we'll get into it later. I'm talking Karla Turner now. I like Karla Turner. She's a smart, lucid woman. Dr. David Jacobs is a fucking goofball. Professor Jacobs, whatever the fuck he calls himself. Anyways, okay. So, top 10 list that she's gotten out of her voluminous studies of the abduction literature. Number 1, And I think this is the most important as well, and I'm glad she put it at number 1, and I think it's the most intelligent thing that she could have done is put at number 1. We don't know with any certainty what these entities may be. And that is, that's par excellence. I'm glad she put that first. She does refer to them as aliens. She refers to them as others. I've seen her refer to them as ultra-terrestrials as well. Really, the thing is, we don't know, A, if this is happening at all, or B, if it is, what level of reality is this occurring on? Number 2, at least some of the aliens are liars. So yes, this does come up quite a bit. I find it also strange that this is often associated with seances and spiritualism, that you can't trust what the spirits say. It's very much the same thing. But if you're ever abducted by aliens, basically just, whatever they say to you, just reply with, right, okay, maybe wait, if you have 2 aliens with you, wait for one to say something, and then look at the other one, and then make the jack-off motion with your hand to the other one. I bet they'd really get a kick out of that. I just picture my own eyes rolling, like... I don't know. Oh, if only I had the visual component to show you what I mean. Anywho, it's an audio medium. Moving on. Number 3. Human perceptions / memories are controlled by... Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Human perceptions / memories are controlled, not to mention pain, pleasure, and emotions as well. So essentially, the entire phenomenon is controlled by, well, not fucking you. That's for sure. So whoever or whatever is going on, this is beyond your control. Number 4, the aliens can create false memories. And this isn't like satanic panic false memories. This is like screen memories. Like they say in Twin Peaks, the owls are not what they seem. That's straight out of the UFO literature. People see a bunny on the side of the road. Next thing I know, 2 hours are missing. So there's that. Number 5. Abductees report honestly, but it's alien-controlled information. That's kind of, I would say that's a restatement of what she said before, but it's true. I mean, to a degree. Once again, we'll get into my own theories at the end. 6, there is a serious element of human involvement in abductions. Now, I want to reiterate that her husband was abducted, yet he was also a member of military intelligence before, and also, this didn't happen until after they started going to MUFON meetings and group therapy sessions with strangers who they've never met before. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that maybe all the people who are going to these, group therapy sessions or MUFON meetings, maybe all of them aren't the most stable people in the world. I'm sorry, I know that sounds pretty fucking judgmental, but it's probably true. And you may have some people thinking, I don't know, it's just the classic scenario of, it reminds me of Ruby Ridge, how one side thinks the Zionist-occupied government is coming and the other side thinks it's the fucking terrorists, and they are both letting into their paranoia and causing a problem to happen, a big problem. Everyone views the other side as demonic, so they're switched into hypervigilance mode, and maybe, members of MUFON were the ones following them, not the military. You don't have to be in the military to own a unmarked white car. So, I don't know. And that's if it was an unmarked white car. I mean, what do they mean by unmarked white car? Exactly. I don't know. Probably wouldn't hurt to get some clarification on that. But she's no longer with us. So, number 7. Abduction involves physical procedures with a spiritual goal, not all procedures are quote-unquote reproductive in nature. And this is true as far as the abduction literature goes. Yes, there are procedures which involve, brain surgeries or the injection or extraction of, non-reproductive fluids. Things like sticking wires and implants in people, etc. It's not always reproductive in nature. All of these physical number 8. All of these physical examinations also have a spiritual and psychological goal in mind. So the spiritual thing I'll get to in a second, but psychological. The psychological ramifications and trauma of the abduction experience has been known in many cases to cause people to have a extreme 180, if you will, in outlook on, their social outlook, their political outlook. She specifically says it makes people trust the government less, and I was like, well, I don't know. You're in the 80s. People were still a little fucking silly during the Reagan era. I don't think Iran-Contra happened yet to fucking totally crush everyone's spirits about Saint Ronnie at the time. That's enough of my editorializing. Sorry. So there's that, and then there's the ecological changes or outlooks, spiritual changes. People have just very visceral reactions and changes in behavior and personality that occur, and sexuality too. She mentioned specifically that some, in fact, quite a lot of alien abductees become compulsive masturbators. Too easy. Too easy. I said last time that then probably everyone on this fucking planet has been abducted by aliens at some point. Yeah. So the changes are, and this also goes into my own sort of overarching meta theory later, but there are intense reactions and consequences that come out of these experiences and trauma. Number 9. Oh, and I'm sorry. And the spiritual aspect is there. It's same thing. People sort of, it's like maybe you were maybe you were an evangelical Christian, and then all of a sudden you start getting into Eastern mysticism or things about quantum mechanics start to make a spiritual sense to you, things like that, and you start to broaden your horizons, so to speak, in a spiritual sense. Number 9, with advanced technology, the quote-unquote aliens can create total false realities. This is one that I almost wholeheartedly disagree with, because once again, we have no real objective evidence that there is technology, that this is a form of technology, but it's just not there. I mean, once again, you see on occasion the reports of implants and things like that, but nobody knows what the fuck they are. And that's, if we're getting unadulterated, unfiltered information, you must always consider the source, is what I'm saying. I don't know. I almost want to. It's the application of media literacy and conspiracy culture literacy as well. Cui bono? Consider the source. Number 10. Aliens show a mysterious interest in the human soul. And I will say that, yes, this pops up quite a bit in the literature. I find it very strange that these aliens are often quoted as saying things like, we have the right to do this, or we're supposed to do this, or this is just what we do. So this also kind of plays towards my own meta theory, which once again we'll get into here in a bit. Yeah, that's her top 10 list of like what she presented at a MUFON conference, which I believe I also posted to the Facebook page. You can watch it. She expounds a lot better on some of these, but from her own point of view. I'm coming at this from the fact that most of this is referring to or coming from a hypnotic regression viewpoint, because that just kind of reinforces the whole ephemeral nature of this phenomenon, the dreamlike hypnagogic state. I mean, I've had weird shit happen to me, but I've always had the psychological escape hatch of the fact that these things happen to me usually on psychedelic drugs or in a hypnagogic state. I'll say just in the last 2 weeks, and granted, like I said, I'm going through detoxification, but just in the last 2 weeks alone, if I had to count the weird shit that happened to me in a hypnagogic state, I felt a little person, like a goblin or something, jump from the arch of my bedpost into my bed behind me while I was asleep, which incurred me to say, "God damn it," and then it was gone. And then there was another night where I woke up and saw a woman kneeling next to my bed, but her head was upturned like in a permanent, like her face was the bottom of her chin, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's very weird. And, I might not have been the nicest person about it when it happened. I think my half-sleep brain was like, "Oh, you fucking weird bitch," or something like that, which, granted, is not, the best manners. But also, if you're a supernatural entity, there are certain rules of engagement that you should probably adhere to if you want to make contact with a human being. And that's just me. That's my own that's my own take on it. So, if you're a ghost or an alien and you want to talk to somebody, you got to realize you're going to freak them the fuck out. So maybe you should choose, don't come in that form, amongst other things. I don't know. You can't just fucking spring that shit on people. But once again, like I said, this is just stuff that happened when I was in a hypnagogic state. So, I mean, there's no... I can write it off just as easily. It's not stuff that I have to deal with on a regular basis. It's not a traumatic event such as an abduction experience is for the vast majority of people, because this is just weird shit that happens. And, like I said, it's not anything I can, imbue too much meaning in, because it's just strange shit. And stuff like this happens to me all the time. It's just because I have a weird brain, I guess. I don't know. But if I've had I've had something tantamount to an abduction experience, but once again, like I said, it was on psychedelic drugs. So who knows? I can't, but see, and once again, this sort of plays into my theory that we'll get into later about the levels of reality and thought, and for lack of a better word, trauma. I think trauma is a heavy word. I mean, it definitely applies to alien abductions, but not. I don't know. It's too easy for people to turn things that have happened in their lives into a pissing contest. It's why I never got into a 12-step program. If you've ever been to one of those things, man, they are a fucking bummer. Anywho, regardless of that, people have different coping mechanisms, and some people, I had a, I had a one-off, just quick movie concept idea. I'm trademarking it right now. I'm throwing it out there. If anyone wants to write it with me, we'll fucking get at me. We'll talk about it. But I wanted to do a dark comedy, essentially, about someone who is being plagued by the supernatural, or abduction type experiences going on, but just through the entire movie is completely fucking oblivious to it. Like, and it's not even any fault of their own. It's just how people are today. Like, you know, they're looking at their phones, they're watching TV. I don't know. The idea strikes me as funny. I think you could get a lot of mileage out of it. But like I said, if you want to take that, just credit me in the fucking, you know, money department. Anyways, so yeah, people have different coping mechanisms, and this is why I said also I'm trying not to bash on people's belief systems as much anymore. You know, it's just what you got to do to get through the day. It's coping mechanisms. It's what we need to, you know, get through life. Some people, you know, just it's for them, it's their kids or your cat or your dog or your favorite meal. It's the little things. It's a cookie. It's a cigarette. To quote Dennis Leary. So yeah, David Jacobs, who his background is also as an educator, and this is the guy. I didn't have quite enough to do a full episode on him, but you'll see that there are thematic elements that unite him with Dr. Karla Turner. Both of them are getting their information through hypnotic regression. Both are from academic backgrounds. Both are educators. I can't remember the university specifically. I thought it was Tulane, but that's not it. It's another one that starts with T. I can't remember. But he was a history professor for the longest time. And he ended up working with Bud Hopkins, who was a well-regarded, for the most part, UFO researcher. He learned hypnotic regression skills and techniques through Bud Hopkins. And in listening to him, like, I have some of his books. I haven't read them yet. But they're all very scary. They have names like The Threat or They Walk Among Us and things like that. He is very much a proponent of the hybridization theory, and that the ones who walk among us are indistinguishable from humans, what he calls hybrids, which I'm sure he's copyrighted at some point, just judging from I listened to him on Art Bell. And I love Art Bell, R.I.P., you know, he's sort of one of the unofficial patron saints behind why I wanted to get into this sort of material and do this show. But at the same time, Art Bell, and maybe it's just the time frame he's from, he didn't really ask a lot of the hard questions. And I think that I'm going to chalk that up to more. He wanted to entertain and scare people more than anything. He was an entertainer. That's for fucking sure. One of the best. So it's strange that he didn't ask certain questions when he was talking with David Jacobs and had him on his show. He kind of bought into the whole story, and he's like, this is terrifying. Essentially, these aliens, these hybrids, are a master race, and so and things like that. To which David Jacobs replies, you said master race. I didn't say that. So you can tell that this David Jacobs fellow is trying to be as diplomatic as possible. So one of the callers that did call in, she had a very interesting question, and she said, how do these hybrids, how do they basically infiltrate society without having families? You know, they have no background. They're from out of nowhere, essentially. And he had no real answer for that. And David Jacobs also posits throughout the episode, he kind of like throws out the finer points of his research and what he's found. And one of the points that he makes is, these hybrids, as he calls them, or hybrids, or whatever you want to call it, they have a neurological ability that sets them apart from humanity. And this is what, and this is what incurred Art Bell to refer to them as a master race, essentially, but they are able to neurologically read and manipulate the human mind. Second of all, another point he puts out is that he has, according to him, he's done extensive hypno-regression therapy sessions with over 1,000 abductees or experiencers or whatever you want to call them. Now, he even, at some point, he flippantly even says, like, that the stories become so similar that they put you to sleep. But he said maybe that's part, I mean, I'll give him credit for saying that maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's supposed to be like this sort of, I believe the word he used was soporific narrative that you just hear so many times, like, yeah, that it's meant to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's meant to be, you know, just commonplace for you to sort of, you know, wave your hand at. But at the same time, if you go through all the abduction literature, just about every example of alien abduction has some nugget of quote-unquote high strangeness that also sets it apart from something else. I don't know. This kind of plays into my own theory of clown ops. If you're not familiar with clown ops, I'd go back and listen to some of the old episodes. I don't have enough time to go into it here, but basically it's like psyops, but it involves ridiculous bullshit that is meant to more or less discredit everything else that happened to you. Like saying, oh, yeah, you know, I was a victim of satanic ritual abuse, and there was a cult, and they were all wearing robes, and one of them had a clown nose. And everything falls apart from that point. It's like, okay, all right, that's your story, that's what you're sticking with. It's true. And they told me that by wearing a clown nose, no one would believe me. And so, yeah, okay. Clown ops, there it is. Essentially, in a nutshell. So maybe there is a strange, you know, hand wave, clown opsy sort of element to how all these stories are the same. But he even said he was like falling asleep during these. I don't know. He's just very flippant about a lot of it. He's like constantly saying things like, I wish I didn't have to tell people that, you know, the world is fucked and everything is terrifying. Which, I mean, is true, but not in an alien sense. And not everything is fucked. It's just ridiculous and silly, really. That's my own interpretation of the situation. So go and marinate on that for a minute. But anyways, David Jacobs also mentions that he has, in his thousands of interviews with abductees and experiencers, he's talked to people who they have all these elements of missing time in their lives. And then they'll say like, oh yeah, my friend Eric. And they're like, well, who's Eric? And he's like, oh, he's my best friend. Well, who is he? I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know a lot about him. So he's basically saying that these hybrids or hybrids or whatever, with the ability to neurologically read and manipulate the human mind, no less, are basically commandeering abductees and experiencers to teach them how to wear clothes, how to get an apartment, how to buy groceries, how to go to a baseball game. But why, pray tell, this is my question, would they even fucking need to do that if they can just sap this information from our minds? It makes no sense to me. And the second sort of, he gives another example of like, he had some guy under regression, and he's talking about like, he was taking a hybrid somewhere, and he was like, yeah, sit in the chair. And the hybrid sits in the chair. He sits on the very edge of the chair. And he's like, no, you got to lean back. So the hybrid gets up and like looks at the back of the chair. He's like, oh yes, there is a solid back to this chair. I can lean back on it. And then he sits back down in the chair and then leans back like straight-bodied. Which once again, this plays into my theme that I said earlier, that if there are indeed aliens, and this is how they operate, then they are fucking retarded. This makes no sense for a a technologically or interdimensionally advanced higher species, and B, one that allegedly has a neurological ability to sap informations from and or manipulate our minds. The other part, like in keeping with what the caller asked about how these people just come out of nowhere, these hybrids, do you realize how many fucking numbers are attached to you? Now, I'm sure that all this can be, once again, hand-waved, literally almost, with a, you don't need to see my numbers. And I know that makes me sound like an asshole by saying this, but that's essentially what David Jacobs was getting at. I think that just, they're like, I don't need money to pay for which, oh man, I would love to try that repeatedly at multiple stores and retail outlets just to see the reactions on people's faces. I don't need money to pay for your petty earth, I don't know, cheeseburgers, whatever the fuck. But the thing that really set me off about David Jacobs, this is the number one thing, and I'm saying the last time I did this too, I don't remember exactly, and I'm hoping it's the same episode that I posted to Facebook, because there might be multiple David Jacobs Art Bell episodes, but this is the one I remember most, because he's talking about his book, The Threat, and the hybrid aliens, and their overarching agenda, etc. The thing that got to me the most was that, and this is something that they talk about repeatedly in most alien abduction literature, is that certain people anyone who's been abducted, essentially, has probably, most likely, been abducted multiple times throughout their lives. This is basically one of the things we quote-unquote know about alien abduction and alien abduction literature, etc. This idea recurs again and again and again. And not only that, it occurs in the same family bloodlines. So you're having these same people, these same individuals who are repeatedly abducted over and over and over again throughout their lives. Now, David Jacobs says he's talked and, personally, hypnotically regressed over 1,000 abductees or experiencers. Now, if you've got over 1,000 people who have been in this boat, and these thousands of people are having this phenomena reoccur in their lives, happen to them over and over and over, I'm just throwing out a number as same as last time. Let's say a dozen. You would have to have, and once again, also, his interview with Art Bell was done in 2015. So consider the state in 2015 of the ubiquity of phones and cameras and things like that, and consider where we're at now in 2024, okay? Not only that, but to say, the state of people who want to be internet famous and things like that. Take at least a dozen people out of his 1,000 who are repeatedly being abducted and subjected to this phenomenon, allegedly, supposedly, maybe. And you've got to have at least a dozen who are going to be okay, 100% on board with being 24/7, put under surveillance, video cameras, the whole works, in order to vindicate themselves in the eyes of naysayers, to prove to the world they are not crazy, that this is really happening, that this is some real shit going down, and that we need to fucking do something about it. That would be the end-all be-all. That would be the capturing of objective fucking evidence. Proof, at last. But he says that every time they've tried something like that, the people in question will wake up in some sort of trance and turn off all the recording equipment right before an event occurs. He even said one time that he was talking to a woman on the phone. She's like, I hear something upstairs. I think they're here to abduct me. I better let you go. This is the most ridiculous bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to overreact. It's just that he lets it go after that too. And I'm like, why don't you put extra surveillance tails outside of these people's house. Do something, because you're not trying hard enough. I don't understand. I just can't take that at face value. I can't take the fact that he is not trying hard enough to capture potential evidence when he's got it right there in his fucking hands. I cannot condone that thought process that just lets that go. That maybe probably never even considered it, really. Considering how kind of goofy he is. I don't know. But, and you know what? I'm sorry. I don't mean to call him goofy. He's an educated man. He's probably great at what he does. I'm sure he's, a healing hand and helping ear to help these people deal with whatever it is they're going through. But if we're looking for 100% irrefutable evidence that something like this is going on, then why wouldn't you take every fucking opportunity made available to you to, in fact, get hold of objective evidence? And that's what fucking really pisses me off about the dude. That's why I took issue with the guy listening to him. I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. Because it might not sound like it sometimes when I talk about aliens, but I want all of this to be true so bad. So bad. Because I don't think people dedicate that much brain power to how much this potentially entails if it's true. How much of a shift in reality, how much we will have to rethink everything. That's probably the problem right there, is people just don't they don't want to put the work into it. But this totally rewrites everything. And I'm not even talking about, a ridiculous, ancient aliens rewriting and rethinking of our religious blah, blah, blah. Like, this is just from a everyday secular standpoint. And he also posits that, he posits in the episode as well that we are most likely a genetic creation of aliens. Yet at the same time, they have a hybrid program going on with us that's hijacking our evolution. So it's unnatural evolution. But if we were made by them and they're hybridizing with us, I don't know. There's just things that don't make sense. I'm not a biologist, but wouldn't you hit a genetic bottleneck sooner or later? I mean, if the aliens are trying to genetically mingle with us in order to, diversify or strengthen their own biological natures, etc., whatever you want to call it, what are the hybrids going to breed with other hybrids? Are the hybrids going to breed with humans? I mean, eventually, unless you keep doing this process over and over, I would think there's going to be some kind of, stopgap that's going to occur, and from a genetic standpoint. But I don't know. Once again, I'm not a biologist. It's just that's where you hit the wall on a lot of this stuff, because there are so many unanswered questions, and it's the classic conspiracy theorist, yeah, and then, or what happens after that, or why. There's just so many unanswered questions that don't, once you start picking at it, it falls apart. I believe the ancient Greek logic argument is referred to as abductio ad absurdum. Reductio absurdum. You just reduce the argument down smaller and smaller by asking why. Little kids do it all the time because they know inherently when they see and hear bullshit, I think. It carries off for some people into their adulthood, but apparently not that many. So, yeah. These are just logical, arguments that I fail to see anyone asking or making. It just it incenses me, and I get that we want to live in the story, and you want to have the world be a stranger place. Other than the the things I said about personal responsibility earlier, like when aliens come, they'll fix everything, or what have you, or or they'll fuck everything up, and well, we had our run, whatever the case may be. I don't know. This is where I kind of get into my own overarching meta theory on this stuff, and like I said earlier about the Jacques Vallée school, this sort of being a psychedelic-ish experience that human beings have, sort of put up with all throughout our own history, in interaction with the other. I think this is some sort of shamanic sickness of sorts. I put this really well in the previous episode, so it was when I had my original train of thought going, choo-choo. So at least listen to that part. I know it's shitty audio, but listen to my theory at the end, because that's where I was able to really tie everything together well. And I think my overarching idea basically is that maybe these aliens, I'm not saying that they're not what everyone else says they are. This is just my own potential idea. You have things like mimetic entities. The way I put it last time was that you have, take the Cold War. You've got two superpowers. One represents communism, one represents capitalism. Now, if the Cold War goes hot and these people fucking destroy each other, it's not the people who win, it's the idea. And the idea will persevere every time. Now, memes are more than cat pictures. The word meme is meant to be sort of concomitant with the word gene, as it's a unit of genetic information. So a meme is a unit of viral information that can reproduce itself. So you've got mimetic entities, these idea complexes that sort of perpetuate themselves through humanity, through the mass mind, through the global network of intelligence, the collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and through time as well. So some ideas last longer than others. I mean, Greek gods is another example. Like, take the Greco-Roman gods. They've been around for fucking ever. They don't really control shit, but they kind of have their own separate reality to them. And that's kind of how I see these aliens to a degree as well. Except, I think these are built in to the human psyche. I think these entities, maybe the best I could liken them to was antibodies. And that a lot of the abduction scenarios and experiences are so... they revolve so much around medical examination and reproductive phenomena and genitalia in general, because that's how we get here. That's how we, perpetuate ourselves, is through reproduction. And you have, I mentioned a psychedelic researcher named Stanislav Grof as well, who did a lot of research into the reoccurring imagery of psychedelic experiences, specifically bad trips. He talked about things that, certain images that keep showing up, like you'll see with a lot of abduction experiences, things like, medical examinations that are very violating, overcome by lights, just very bad trip imagery, things like, there was one specific example he gave that like concentration camps and the rooms where they put all the babies in the hospital. There's just certain things that basically come back to sort of birth trauma. And I had this idea that sort of coincides with that. I'm not saying that's what aliens are, but I think they sort of overlap with that into also a sort of memory base that exists before we are born. And I'm talking like, maybe pre-consciousness, a form of rudimentary consciousness, whenever it forms. I don't want to get into the whole reproductive rights, when is a baby argument, but maybe there are strange memory complexes that hold over from being a zygote or whatever. Who knows what point at conception, maybe before, when you're a sperm, who knows. But there's also collective memory, there's ancestral memory, there are these things that exist in our subconscious that go way back before we even were the people we call people today. And things like Greek gods, etc., sort of exist in that area because people believed that was what was, the underpinning of reality. I don't think people lend a lot of credence to ancient belief systems in that was reality. And that was, how things worked. There was no question of why or how. It just was. And there was no, you just adhered to that. You went to temple and you fucking paid your respects to the gods and, asked them for this, that, or the other thing and made your offering or your sacrifice because these were the mechanics of reality. This was how shit was done. And that is still very much programmed into our brain. I mean, if you look at the reptilian complex, the R complex in our brain, which I think is a good name for the Republican Party. Anyways, if you look at the R complex in our brain, ritual is a big portion of it. And, so many conspiracy theories are like put out as like, oh, this is a ritual. This is a ritual to do this, that, and the other thing by people who I think scarcely understand what ritual is. You don't get something for nothing, first of all. But second of all, ritual is symbology. It's meant to affect a level of recurrent reality. The best way I can still put it is it's something that we do naturally. It's like wearing makeup or barbecuing, cooking meat with fire. These are things that are very ritualistic that we still do today, but you don't think of them as rituals. But these are all kinds of things that underlie our behavior and, sort of dictate our thoughts and actions. So in conjunction with that, I kind of refer to these quote unquote aliens as antibodies. And I see a sort of, how to put this? What they do is not pleasant. But when antibodies get to work, we undergo a fever. And of course, the fever is also, it's symbolic in shamanic sicknesses. When you're trying to excise a demon or an evil spirit, or if we're trying to cut out the tumor or the cancer, the antibodies get to work and you start to feel shitty because your body is going to fucking work. And I think these things might be a form of antibodies as far as our overall evolution or change or something. Maybe in how we're meant to naturally progress into space people. I don't know. Maybe space has nothing to do with it, really. Just how we are here. But the abduction experience is highly unpleasant. It's highly traumatic. And I think that's kind of meant to be that way. This is all about sort of overcoming adversity. The best way I could put it, as I did last time, is that you are dropped into the fire, you are lowered into the crucible, and you get blacksmithed the fuck up into a badass sword. And once you're a fucking badass sword, you can take on anything. It's adversity and conflict in life that makes us who we are. It makes us better, stronger people. All the bullshit you deal with, every day you're getting stronger and better in every way. And I have no choice to believe that, because otherwise, what's the fucking point? But as I've said before, you can't see stars without darkness, and roses don't grow without shit. So you need this conflict and this adversity and trauma even in life. I'm not saying that everything happens for a reason, because some shit does not need to be, but this is the idea behind it, I think, and it's built into us. We have these sort of built-in coping mechanisms and psychological, like aliens as a sort of psychological personification or externalization of the psychological processes we have inherently to make ourselves stronger, to make ourselves better. It's not always pleasant, and it's not always going to be nice, but fuck, man, when is life always pleasant or nice, you know? Existence is a fucking struggle. As I said last time, the word Satan is meant to convey adversity. It means adversity or adversary. It's a thing that stands in your way that must be overcome. And, you know, I think Satan gets a bad rap, but Satan, Saturn, these are like recurring mythological ideas and folkloric and legendary ideas about a thing that is meant to be overcome, that stands in the way of what it is you're trying to do, of your life in general. And this is about overcoming adversity, overcoming the adversary, something that makes you stronger and better. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel that I sort of had a lot more coherent connective tissue in the last one, but I wanted to put this new episode out because just that audio was dog shit, and I didn't want to subject you all to that, so I kind of wanted to get the main points across in this episode. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything on KARLA Turner I had, as well as Dr. David Jacobs. Yeah, I posted up some things on Facebook in regards to, you know, surveillance of potential abductees. I found like one video of an alien allegedly entering someone's bedroom, but it's such shitty quality. It was from a History Channel thing. It's like a short. And now we have, you know, there's shitty cameras everywhere and shitty phone cameras, and you have AI bullshit. So once again, you know, the truth is only truthiness. The truth is whatever is yelled the loudest the most times, because we live in a post-truth world. So take everything with a grain of salt. Like I said, you know, just constantly question. Never take anything at face value. Consider the source, cui bono, etc., etc. So yeah, having said that, it's time to close with a true crime story to cleanse the palate. This is the story of Vladimir W. I'm not going to get too into the specifics. I read the story once before, but if you wanna get into it and see the the photos that go along with it, I recommend checking out the site Herman the Shocker. Herman Schultz, the Shocker from Spider-Man. Yeah, it's called Herman the Shocker, and it's he covers a lot of stuff like this true crime, gore, strangeness. So if you're into that, it's worth checking out. I will say that some of the pictures look fake till I started scrolling down more, and I was like, oh shit, that's real. So yeah, this is a story of a fella by the name of Vladimir W., last name unknown, probably for the best, in Poland, 1999. Apparently, he took a screwdriver to his own father and stabbed him several times, and then also tased him several times in order to decapitate his father. And then he hung his father's body upside down in the basement in order to bleed him dry. He later took the head, which he threw out into the garden, and took it back up to his room and basically skinned it and created a skin mask out of his father's face, which he then wore. And it was while he was wearing his father's skin mask and his father's clothes that he would interact with his elderly grandfather as his father. And his elderly grandfather had no idea that he was talking to his grandson wearing his grandson's father, you know how family works, his son's face. They ate breakfast together. I believe it was cereal, if I remember correctly, which just for some reason strikes me as just so much more wrong. But yeah, they interacted for quite a while until the grandfather was like, something strange about this. The grandfather would later go down to the basement and find his son's remains, to which afterwards he ran out of the house to the nearest neighbor's place in order to call the police. During that time, Vladimir W. would put on an overcoat and leave the house, still wearing his father's face and clothes, and ghosted at a nearby bus station, just watching the police show up at his house, until eventually the police were like, where the fuck is he? Where the fuck is he? It's like, oh, he's over here at the bus stop right up the street. He was arrested, and yeah, that's the end of Vladimir W. But also, there's another case in Poland that happened around this time that involves a woman named Katarina Z. She was a young woman who kept to herself. She was a college student. She was very, they say, I don't know, they paint a picture of her as being very not outgoing and whatnot, but it seemed that she was sort of changing, you know, as most people do in college. You kind of come out of your shell. But unfortunately for her, she had met someone who did not have good intentions. And next thing you know, Katarina Z goes missing. And not long after that, a boat captain has a technical issue in which his propeller is clogged or, you know, caught up with something. And it turns out that there was a human skin suit that was clogging the propeller. They pull it out, and eventually the police get a hold of it, and it turns out to belong to this poor girl, Katarina Z. Now, there are people who speculated that these two cases are connected. I'm inclined to agree to a degree in that most people who are murderers don't... This Vladimir W. fella, this would not be his first rodeo, because most people don't come out the gate with that level of savagery and just overindulgence in such things as he was involved in. It takes building up to that. So maybe they are connected. Maybe there's a weird, I don't know, like literal skin trade going on in Poland, or was. They thought they found the man who did this to Katarina, but I think eventually he was acquitted, so the mystery was still open. It's very strange. Yeah, I highly recommend that you look up the Herman the Shocker website, as well as just do some research into the Polish skinning cases. It's very strange stuff, very gruesome. The story of a man wearing his father's skin and eating breakfast, specifically cereal. I don't know why that detail bothers me so much, but it's some of the wildest horseshit I've read in a while. It's just fucked up. It's crazy. So yeah, take this episode, I think, as supplemental material to the one I posted previously this morning. I finally got my audio fixed, thank fuck. So there's that. But I will try to put everything back into this as well as I can. You know, there are complimentary bits, so if you've already listened to that, I've already embarrassed the fuck out of myself by talking about myself in the previous episode. Probably didn't need to do that, but I don't know. I was also in a much more vulnerable place then. Whereas now I'm 100% just filled with certainty and cocksure in my strut. Anywho, yeah, since this is coming out today and this is a bit of a supplemental episode, I'm going to try to release an episode Wednesday as well and just sort of kind of catch up from the time I've lost. Yeah, I don't know. I feel that I owe it to you guys, and I'm, you know, now that I'm not bedridden and super drippy, I don't know, my I don't know. My drive is back. I'll just say that. I need to create. I need to learn and research and force my knowledge upon the rest of you. I do want to thank you specifically Wells, Lowry, my sister. Man, thank you guys. Thanks to the people who, you know, were checking on me. Thanks to the people who listen to this show. God, man, you guys fucking will never know, seriously, how much I appreciate you. You just keep me going, and I really appreciate it. And I'm serious about. I'm gonna have some guests eventually, so you don't have to just listen to me rail on about this, that, and the other thing every time. But yeah, anywho, I don't want to get all maudlin and emotional. So yeah, this hopefully Wednesday, give or take a day. Like I said in the previous episode, we're going to be going to Japan. We're going to talk about the Japanese equivalent of Merlin, except this was a real person. And we're also going to talk about what happens when you have a government that is not funded, but founded entirely on the use of occultism and magic, and how quickly it fucking falls apart. We're also going to talk about something that I've been wanting to be talking about. It's a sort of subdivision of Eastern mysticism and Eastern occult practices called Kudoku, and I have some very intriguing social and political theories that tie up with this form of ancient Chinese/Japanese occultism. Kudoku, look it up, maybe familiarize yourself with it a little bit before the episode. I mean, I'll give you the rundown, but yeah, this has wide sweeping implications, I think, that I will get into then. So yeah, that's today's episode. Or the supplementary, complimentary episode to the shitty one I released before. I apologize for that. It took me some getting used to, but I finally got the connection problem solved, and hopefully that will never happen again. Trying to get better about quality control too, but like I said, I hadn't put anything out in 2 weeks, so I just wanted to hurry up and get something out. And I had all this stuff still fresh in my mind. So thank you, by the way, if you listen to that. Thank you, by the way, if you listen to that. I apologize for the quality once again. Hopefully that will not happen again. So yeah, I will see you guys Wednesday. Thanks for listening. My name is Mike. This is Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclasts, and I love all y'all motherfuckers.